It's time for another Dice Tower review with John Richard.
Howdy gamers, greetings from Indianapolis, Indiana, the gaming capital of the world. It's time for another board game review with me, Indiana John. Today we're taking a look at a brand new game called Stockpile, which is a stock trading game designed by Seth Van Orden with Nauvoo or Novu Games. Hopefully one of those pronunciations is correct. But in this game, you're going to be buying and selling stocks based upon some partial information. In the real stock market, things like insider trading is considered illegal. But in this game, you're not so much doing insider trading as you're being given a little bit of information about what certain stocks are going to do. And based upon that, you're going to be making decisions about what to buy, what to sell, and when to do those things. And so it makes for a very interesting buy low and sell high kind of a game. So let's take a look at the setup and gameplay of Stockpile and see if we can answer that all-important gamer question, is it fun? So here's the board setup for a game of Stockpile. The board basically consists of 6 tracks for 6 different companies that you're going to be buying and selling stocks for during the game. And the tracks represent the price of the stock, and then there's a marker to show the current price, and everything starts off at 5. You have these areas here which are bidding areas, and underneath is where the stock piles are going to go of the stock shares that you're going to be buying and selling during the game. You also have a whole bunch of piles of this really nice double-sided card-based money. You have a really oversized first player marker. You have a round track up here to show how many rounds you're going to play, which is based upon the number of players. You have a deck of cards, which mainly consists of cards that represent the different companies. These are the shares of stocks that you're going to be buying. There's also trading fees cards where you can where you have to pay money when you buy these piles of stocks. We'll be talking about in a second in fees. And then you also have some action cards, these stock bust and stock boom cards, where you can adjust the price of the stocks. So we'll talk about all that stuff in just a second. Each individual player is going to get a player board that has 2 areas on it. There's this area here, which is your stock portfolio, which is hidden from all other players, but it's a face-down pile of all the stocks that you currently own. And then there's a split stock portfolio if your stock happens to split, where the shares will go there. We'll talk about that a little bit later. You get a bidding meeple for bidding on purchasing things, and then you're going to get $20,000 in this card money. At the beginning of the game, every player is also going to get a random initial share of stock, and it's different for every player will get a different one, but this will be your first share of stock that you'll get to put in your stock portfolio. So a round in Stockpile is going to start off with what's called the information phase, where every player is going to get a little piece of insider information about what the stocks are going to do at the end of the round. So there are these 2 decks of cards, one with the name of all the companies on them, and then one with all of these sort of movement values. So we have -2, -3, +4, and so everybody's going to get one of each of those. So at the for example, someone might know that American Automotive is going to drop $3 at the end of the round, but only one player will know that. So every player will get one of those, and then there will be one piece of information that will be public knowledge. It'll go right here. So everybody will know that Stanford Steel is going to move up 1 at the end of the round. So armed with this little piece of insider information, you'll then move on to what's called the supply phase. And this is where we're going to be building stockpiles, piles of cards, underneath these little areas here on the board. So you're going to deal out 1 card face up into each location. Each player will then get 2 cards that they will add to these stockpiles. And in turn order, you're going to look at the cards and you're going to decide where you're going to put them. And you're going to place 1 card face up and 1 card face down. So for example, I have a Cosmic Computers card here. Maybe I want to add that to the pile with other Cosmic Computers to make that a little bit of a cooler pile, a better pile. And then I have a trading fees card here. Whenever someone buys one of these piles, they're going to have to pay this money. So that's $3,000 that they'll have to pay. So maybe I want to make that a bit of a secret, so I'll place that face down so that someone won't know that they'll have to pay that money. The idea, though, is that each player is going to go around and will have to place 1 card face up and 1 card face down. So you'll end up with piles with face up and face down cards. Once all the cards have been placed, then we'll move on to the demand phase where you're going to bid on these piles of cards. And you're bid in these areas right here. So they go from 0 up to 25. If you want to guarantee that you will get a pile of cards, you can just go right on to the 25 and then you'll pay 25 and you're guaranteed to get that one. But if you start off lower, like if you start off on the 0, the next player has the opportunity to bid someplace else, or they can choose to bid a higher amount, thereby kicking you out of that location, and then it'll come back around to you and you're going to have to go someplace else. Now you can continue to kind of go back and forth if you want to, kicking each other out, but eventually everybody is going to be on one of these piles. So you're going to continue this bidding until everybody is in one location, 1 meeple per station. And then everybody's going to pay their money and will purchase these piles of cards. If you happen to end up with a card with a trading fee, you have to pay it immediately. If you end up in a situation where you don't have enough money to pay for your trading fees, then this sort of becomes debt and it'll sit down next to you, and as soon as you get any money, you have to pay this off first before you can actually get any positive cash flow there. So then after buying these cards, then we are going to move on to the action phase. The action phase is pretty quick, and it might not happen every round, but it's going to involve the stock boom and stock bust cards that might be part of the stockpiles that you picked up. One of them will allow you to move a stock up to $2, and one will allow you to move a stock down $2. So anybody that has these cards in turn order, they'll get an opportunity to play them. You have to use these in the turn that you get them. So you would just take the card, say, hey, I'm going to move up Epic Electric, and you'd move it up 2 spots. Just that simple. You'll do that until all of these cards have been played, and then we're going to move on to the selling phase. In the selling phase, you have the opportunity to sell any stocks that you have on the board, that you have in your stock portfolio, for the price that is currently listed. And you may want to do this because maybe you have some insider information, like you know that American Automotive is going to go down 3 spaces at the end of the round, so you might want to sell shares of stock at that time. But you're going to you can sell as much as you want or as little as you want. It's not required, but you would just take your cards, discard them, and then get the money that's associated with those cards. That's the selling phase. The final phase is the movement phase, where you're going to reveal the insider information that you'd been given at the beginning of the round, and you're going to move the prices accordingly. So bottom line bank here is going to move down too. So hopefully someone has sold that stock before it took a dive there. This will be a part of the game where people are probably going to be groaning or cheering because they just sold stock, and then they get to see whether they made a good decision based upon the price and where things moved. You'll do every player's cards, and then you'll actually also do this one here. So Stanford Steel moves up 1. Pretty much that's the end of the round, and then you will repeat a particular number of rounds based upon the number of players, at which point you will do endgame scoring. Before we talk about endgame scoring, I want to talk to you a little bit about something that might happen with the stock prices, and that is the splitting of stocks. So let's say that American Automotive right here is at 9, and that it ends up getting one of those cards that will move it up +4. Well, once it gets to here, then it gets kind of stuck. What's going to happen then is once it gets past here to like 11, this little symbol here means that the stock is going to split. So what will happen is it'll go with a +4, 1, 2. Then the price immediately goes back down to 6. And then it goes up the other 2, 3, 4. So it would end up at 8. But what's going to happen on people's individual player board is that every share of that particular stock that they have is then going to split and essentially double. So this player has 3 shares of American Automotive, and what will happen is that those shares that are in this pile here will then move to the stock split portfolio, essentially doubling the number of shares. So instead of starting out having 3 shares at $9 a piece, now they're going to have 6 shares that are at $8 a piece because of that movement. So whenever you start selling stocks, anything that's in this split stock portfolio is going to count as 2 shares of stock. If the stock happens to split a second time, then anything that's in this pile, every share will get $10,000, and then it'll just stay in that pile. So these things can get very valuable very quickly. The other side of that coin is, what if a stock goes all the way to the other side here and goes into the trash can or bankruptcy. If your stock ever gets to zero, it's considered bankrupt, and then you will discard any stock shares that you have will be worthless and will be discarded. So you definitely want to try to sell stock before it gets to that point on the track. At the end of the predetermined number of rounds, you'll do endgame scoring. You're going to look at each one of these companies, and you're going to determine who the majority shareholder is. Everyone will count up their shares of stock, again, doubling the number of shares for the split stock portfolio, and we'll determine who is the majority shareholder, and they will get $10,000. If there's a tie, then all tied players will each get $5,000. Then at that point, you're going to sell all of the stock that you have left at the prices that are on the board at the end of the game. You will add up all of your money, and whoever has the most money is the winner of Stockpile. Now the game comes with two sort of built-in expansions that I wanted to make sure that I mentioned here. One is on the other side of the board, there's a whole different set of tracks for the different companies, and you can see that rather than being equal, they all behave differently. They have their different lengths, and they have sort of different gradations of how the prices move up. On the Stanford Steel one, it even has these little dollar sign symbols to show that whenever it hits these values, then it's going to pay out dividends. So this is an interesting way to play the game because all the stocks behave differently, and so it might change the choices that you make when you're buying and acquiring stocks based upon how these different tracks move. The other sort of built-in expansion are these investor cards that you get. They're sort of like they're special player abilities. So you get to be a particular investor, which they're kind of fun cartoons that are, I guess, sort of based upon real investors. So and there's a variable starting money, and then there's going to be some sort of a special ability. So here's three of my favorites here. We have Broker Bernie, who starts off with $16,000, and for those trading fees, if he ends up with a card with a trading fee, instead of having to pay it, he actually gets it as a bonus. So that's pretty fun. We have Wise Warren, definitely supposed to be Warren Buffett there, and he is allowed to, right before the bidding starts, he can look at all of the face down cards that are in a particular stockpile before he bids. He starts off with $20,000, and then we have Discount Donald with his very great comb over hairdo there. Discount Donald starts off with only $13,000, but whenever he bids, he gets to pay one square to the left of wherever he bids. So if he bid $10,000, he would only have to pay $6,000. So those are some really cool different variants that you can play with in this game that gives a lot of variety to the game of Stockpile. Oh, how I do love a good economic game. And Stockpile is one of the best that I've played in a long time. It falls into that magical category of a game that plays in an hour or less, but that gives you great strategic sort of decisions, you get good player interaction, and it's a game that you can read the rules once, teach it to your friends, and you probably never have to look at the rule book again. It's just that simple. I mean, getting the insider information at the beginning, putting out the cards, and then using that really awesome auction mechanic that comes very similar to Cyclades or Vegas Showdown, where you're able to bump people off. That is great fun. Being able to sort of get in people's heads and figure out what exactly are you interested in buying, and why are you interested in buying that particular pile. You put a face down card there. Is that something good, or are you just trying to bluff and try to get me to buy it? I love that kind of a back and forth bluffing sort of a mechanic there. And then being able to sell your stocks whenever you want, or during that phase, you can sell whatever you want and as much as you want. So you can make the decision of, do I want to try to sell my stock now to get money, maximum money now, or do I want to hold on to it to sell it later and then also possibly get those majority stockholders bonuses at the end? So there's a lot of really cool decisions going on in this game, and it plays quick. So you just play through those rounds, and it just clips along so nicely. I love a game that feels smooth and feels intuitive, and this one definitely has that. So this one I give just one of the highest recommendations to. I think alternate side of the board with the different stocks that do different things, those tracks being different, and also the addition of the investor cards, having that just sort of built in, you know, that you can play with them or without them. I think it's great. There's so much that you can get in this box, and so much replayability that comes along with it. So this one is fantastic. So I highly recommend picking up this game if you like economic games at all. It's also just a great one for like sort of a gateway game for non-gamers as well. If someone knows how to buy low and sell high, which most people in America do at least, they'd be able to figure this game out. So I highly recommend Stockpile.
Thanks so much for watching the Dice Tower videos. Find more great videos and reviews, as well as our top-rated audio podcast at Dicetower.com. You can also find other great shows at DicetowerNetwork.com. I'm Eric Summerer, and you've been watching The Dice Tower. The Dice Tower is sponsored by Cool Stuff Inc., where you can find great games for great prices. Cool stuff in stock. Check them out at CoolStuffInc.com.